the Chi-Town experience on the flight. Let me go tune in to Keek on the mic. He gon' make sure we get our news and highlights. When you get on YouTube, you better hit the like.
Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears have reportedly only been focused on one position group going into the offseason, and Bears fans, if they can figure out this position group, this can turn the Bears into instant contenders. Hey, what's going on, Bears fans? Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Keek on the Mic, the podcast all about the Chicago Bears. As always, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification to catch all Bears content right here on the podcast. Bears fans, before we go any further with today's episode of Keek on the Mic, I want to just have a moment to reflect on the horrific accident between the military helicopter and the American Airlines flight just that happened the other night. Just praying for the victims and their families. It's just a terrible thing. I couldn't even imagine. So make sure you guys are doing the same, praying for the victims and their families. Just a terrible incident that happened the other night. So Bears fans, we have a pretty fun podcast on today's episode of Keek on the Mic. Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears are already busy at work trying to, revamp this roster to hopefully turn them into contenders. Hopefully the Chicago Bears can make the playoffs. We now have our head coach in Ben Johnson. He continues to create a pretty star-studded coaching staff under him. And I know there's a lot of Bears fans that are super excited already going into this season. But Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears still have a whole lot of work to do to add to some key areas of needs on this roster. But it's already reported that Ryan Poles has been focused on one position group going into this offseason. If you guys are into this kind of stuff, it was actually the Senior Bowl this past week, and Ryan Poles, Ian Cunningham, and some of the other Chicago Bear scouts were there from, I think, day 2 and day 3 to check out the Senior Bowl practices. And according to beat writer Nicholas Mariano, he was also down in Mobile, Alabama for the Senior Bowl event this past week. And he was basically saying that Ryan Poles, Ian Cunningham, and the Chicago Bears scouting staff were only focused on one position group, and that was the offensive line and defensive line one-on-one drills. He said that Ryan Poles kind of went away for a little bit to watch the running backs as well, but he was primarily focused on the offensive line and defensive line. And Chicago Bears fans, this is by no surprise whatsoever. We all know that is the biggest weakness for the Chicago Bears on this roster. When you look at the Chicago Bears last year, offensively, they allowed 67 sacks on Caleb Williams, while only ranking 25th in rushing. And then on defense, they were 28th against the run. Obviously, Andrew Billings getting hurt was a huge loss for the Chicago Bears defense, but they only got 29 sacks as well, so there wasn't enough pressure on the quarterback, and they did not stop the run consistently. And then, like I mentioned, on the opposite side of the football, not good at running the football and not good at all protecting quarterback Caleb Williams. So Ryan Poles and the other Chicago Bear scouts are very well aware that that's where the upgrades need to happen for the Chicago Bears. Because when you look at some of the dominant teams, not only in the NFL, but if you're really going to break it down just in the NFC, look how good the Philadelphia Eagles offensive defensive line are. Howie Roseman invested in those positions for years and years and years, and now they have one of the best offensive lines and defensive lines in the National Football League. And you can also look at where Ben Johnson just came from, the Detroit Lions. For years and years and years, they drafted offensive linemen and defensive line, and now they have one of the best offensive line and defensive lines in the National Football League. This is where you win and lose football games. You win and lose in the trenches. And Ryan Poles knows that he has to nail this offseason to revamp those position groups. So it's really good that it seems like he is focused. He understands that in the past he made mistakes and he was trying to nickel and dime that position, but he understands that he's going to have to invest heavily to improve those position groups. So it's good to already hear that he is focused on doing just that. And as we all know, the Chicago Bears have a whole lot of resources to get that done. They have the fourth most cap space going into this offseason. And also they have a whole lot of draft capital as well. So most Bears fans want them to go out and get a guy like Trey Smith, the all-pro guard from the Kansas City Chiefs. That would be a really good investment. There's some Bears fans that also want center Drew Dahlman or maybe Ryan Kelly from the Indianapolis Colts, right? Just to invest in interior to offensive line. And there's also some Bears fans that are taking a close look at guys like Josh Sweat, edge rusher, Chase Young, or maybe even a reunion with Khalil Mack as well. But Ryan Poles also, once again, has a whole lot of draft capital in the 2025 NFL draft. So on today's episode of Keek on the Mic, I'm going to give you guys another 3-round Chicago Bears mock draft. As always, as I'm going through this mock draft, Bears fans, go ahead and engage with me down below in the comment section. Give me a grade for my 3-round Chicago Bears mock draft on today's episode of Keek on the Mic. And let me know what you guys would do if you guys were in General Manager Ryan Poles' shoes. So here we go. It's a 3-round Chicago Bears mock draft. And in the first 3 rounds of the 2025 NFL draft, the Chicago Bears have 4 valuable draft picks to really improve this roster. Round 1, pick 10. Round 2, pick 39 and 41. And round 3, pick 72. So Ryan Poles really has no excuse but to improve this roster this offseason for the Chicago Bears. Starting off with round 1, pick number 10. This may shock some of you guys, but this is a rising player in the 2025 NFL draft. I have the Chicago Bears selecting edge rusher Mike Green out of Marshall. He is 6'4", 248 pounds. He has been at the Senior Bowl this week. He did, I think, opt out just to focus on his NFL draft and prep, all that good stuff. But if you guys did not see this guy on one-on-one drills, he absolutely ran over an Oregon tackle and made headlines this week at Senior Bowl practice. When you asked not only players, edge rushers that were also invited at the Senior Bowl, but also offensive players that were at the Senior Bowl, every single person said that the best player at the Senior Bowl this week was edge rusher Mike Green. This guy is absolutely ridiculous. He's rising up the draft board, and when you turn on the tape of his time at Marshall, he definitely pops off the tape. In 2024, he had 17 sacks, 10 quarterback hits, 32 quarterback hurries. He had a 20.1% pass rush win rate. His PFF pass rush grade was a 91.4, and his PFF run defense grade was a 90.2. Once again, Mike Green is rising up the draft boards. I understand you have guys like Abdul Carter, but this guy definitely deserves some recognition. Once again, his tape is absolutely electric. He's explosive get off, natural bend. He has advanced pass rush arsenal, hand swipe, swim moves, spin moves. He's relentless and high motor, and he's always getting after the quarterback. The only thing that really hurts Mike Green is I think he needs to get a little bit more conditioning under his belt because he has such a high motor. He's always getting after the quarterback. Sometimes he burns out just a little bit. So I think he just needs to get his conditioning up just a little bit because he's always going after the quarterback, high motor. And this is a guy that you're not blocking one-on-one. If he has one-on-one coverage, he's going to absolutely light you up every single time. And this is exactly what Montez Sweat needs. Montez Sweat only had 5.5 sacks last year for the Chicago Bears. And obviously, when we want him to be our number 1 edge rusher, that is obviously not good enough. But at the same time, Montez Sweat is continuously dealing with double teams. So now if you have a guy like Mike Green that is consistently getting in the backfield, opposing offenses won't be able to double team a guy like Montez Sweat. So this would obviously be beneficial for Montez Sweat. It would be beneficial for the defensive line as a whole and beneficial for the Chicago Bears defense as a whole. And honestly, when you look at new defensive coordinator Dennis Allen, he already said that he wants an attacking defense. He doesn't want the offense to dictate their pace and their rhythm on how they want to attack the offense. So this seems to me like a Dennis Allen type of guy. And once again, can you imagine Sweat, Austin Booker, Mike Green, and even if you bring back Darrell Taylor, I think that would be a solid group of pass rushers for the Chicago Bears defense going into next year. And I know this may shock some of you guys because I know Will Campbell may still be on the board. Kelvin Banks still may be on the board. But once again, the Chicago Bears also need help at edge rusher, and Mike Green is skyrocketing up the draft boards, and I can definitely see Ryan Poles keeping a close eye on him through this draft process, and it wouldn't shock me at all with the number 10 overall pick if he ends up pulling the trigger on Mike Green out of Marshall. Going on to round 2, Bears fans, pick number 39. I have the Chicago Bears investing in the trenches once again, still sticking with the defensive line in defensive lineman Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss. He stands at 6'3", 305 pounds. He was also at the Senior Bowl this week for Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears scouts to keep a close eye on. In 2024, he had 6 sacks, also had 7 sacks in 2023, 4 quarterback hits, 25 quarterback hurries, a 10.9% pass rush win rate. His PFF run defense grade was a 91.6. And Bears fans, in my personal opinion, Walter Nolan is the second best defensive tackle after Mason Graham out of Michigan. Nolan to me is a day 1 starter and an impact defender against the run. Once again, the Chicago Bears defense had a awful time stopping the run, especially once Andrew Billings went down. Not only is this a depth move for the Chicago Bears, I also think he can be a day 1 impact starter for the Chicago Bears along guys like Javon Dexter and Andrew Billings as well. He has untapped potential as well as a pass rusher, explosion and raw power that will translate to the next level. This is a guy that will command double teams and help his teammates around him, and that's what you really want in your defensive tackle. Another thing that I really like about Walter Nolan is that he really thrives in the 4-3, so the 4-man front, and just really getting after it as a pass rusher, really being able to disrupt the run. And once again, when he's commanding those double teams, that's going to help a guy like Montez Sweat, Javon Dexter, and of course, if we end up getting another edge rusher like Mike Green, that's going to create that constant pressure and that vision that Dennis Allen is really striving for. And I really think Dennis Allen's defense is only going to work if you have a guy in the middle, a true 3 technique that can not only disrupt the run, but also get after the quarterback at a consistent level. And that's exactly what Walter Nolan showed this season at Ole Miss. I think he's going to be a hot commodity in the 2025 NFL draft. It would be a shock to me if he drops to pick number 39 in round 2. I could definitely see him as a first round pick. But if he does drop to round 2 and the Bears have the opportunity to get him, I think this would be a game-changing, franchise-altering pick for the Chicago Bears defense. So now moving on to round 2, pick number 41. I have the Chicago Bears once again addressing the trenches with tackle Greg Zabel out of North Dakota State. Once again, he was another Senior Bowl guy. So Ryan Poles got a really close look at him this week. He stands at 6'6", 305 pounds. In 2024, he only gave up 1 sack, 2 quarterback hits, 4 quarterback hurries, had a PFF pass block grade of 93.1, a PFF run block grade of 86.5, and his PFF true pass set pass block rate was at 88.2. This guy is a multi-role offensive lineman. A majority of his reps at North Dakota State was at left tackle or right tackle. Has some experience at all positions, even the center position. I know Ryan Poles likes guys that have versatility on his offensive line. When you look at Greg Zabel, he showcases refined technical skills plus good movement to get to the second level. He's effective working double teams and down blocks as well. And another thing I really like about Greg Zabel, and I'm considering Ben Johnson as well and what he really wants in his offense, Greg Zabel would be a perfect fit for Ben Johnson's offense here in Chicago, because Ben Johnson likes to run that zone blocking scheme where his mobility can shine in space, and that's really what Greg Zabel showcased at his time in North Dakota State. Overall, when I look at Zabel, he's tough, he's versatile, and consistently shows outstanding body control with strong hands as well. I think the big question mark for most Bears fans on this pick is, Keek, Greg Zabel didn't really face good competition. He He played in the FCS at North Dakota State. And yes, that is very true. But I think he silenced a lot of critics this week at the Senior Bowl when he was playing, competing against high-level guys that did play against high-level talent in college. And he absolutely dominated, not only in one-on-ones, but the 7-on-7 scrimmages as well. Greg Zabel had a really, really good week at the Senior Bowl. And as we all know, Ryan Poles definitely likes drafting guys that really show out at the Senior Bowl. He has a history of picking guys at the Senior Bowl. So don't be surprised if Greg Zabel is on Ryan Poles' radar. And once again, had a good week at the Senior Bowl. I think it would be outstanding pick in round 2, outstanding value. A guy that I can see playing tackle in NFL, but at the same time, it wouldn't surprise me if the Chicago Bears try to move him inside to guard, where he could also be a dominant fit on this Bears offensive line. If you do bring in a guy like Greg Zabel, then you have offensive line like Braxton Jones at left tackle, which I think he's going to elevate under Ben Johnson's offense. You have Greg Zabel at left guard. If you can get a new center in free agency and maybe in the draft, then you would have obviously get Trey Smith at right guard and obviously Darnell Wright at right tackle. I think that would be a much improved unit for the Chicago Bears in 2025. Now moving on to round 3, pick number 72. I am sticking on the offensive side of the football, and I'm getting Caleb Williams another weapon and running back Travion Henderson out of Ohio State. I know this is a Bears fan favorite. He stands at 5'10", 208 pounds. His 2024 stats is 145 carries for over 1,000 rushing yards, 10 rushing touchdowns, a 108.9 elusive rating on PFF. He had 21 carries of 15 plus yards and 37 missed tackles forced in 2024 for the Ohio State Buckeyes en route to their national championship. Bears fans, I have been a big fan of Henderson for the longest time. He really showed his ass this year at Ohio State. Henderson will be a dynamic 3-down back with the potential to make an immediate impact. This is a workhorse type of back. I think he would bring a different pace to the Chicago Bears backfield, with DeAndre Swift. I know there's a lot of Bears fans that are kind of hesitant on DeAndre Swift. I think he will be okay, but I think the Bears do need to add another guy, and I think Travion Henderson would be the perfect fit for Ben Johnson in his offense for the Chicago Bears backfield. When you look at Henderson, he has a perfect blend of explosiveness, vision, and receiving ability that makes him a perfect fit for modern offenses. Henderson's acceleration and long speed will translate perfectly to both zone and gap schemes. He has had some health issues in the past, but if he can stay healthy, he would be a dynamic weapon for Ben Johnson's offense. Once again, I am fine with the Chicago Bears keeping DeAndre Swift. It wouldn't surprise me if Ben Johnson tries to drop him. He dropped him during his time with the Detroit Lions. This is obviously DeAndre Swift's second year on his 3-year, $24 million deal with the Chicago Bears. But I know that Ben Johnson wants to upgrade the running back position. I think Travion Henderson would be a great start. I think he can be used in many different ways, and I think this is going to be a guy that if he is there in round 3, Ben Johnson and the Chicago Bears are going to be all over. So now looking at the results, Bears fans, for my 3-round Chicago Bears mock draft on today's episode of Keek on the Mic. In round 1, I took edge rusher Mike Green out of Marshall. In round 2, I took defensive lineman Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss. In round 2, I took offensive tackle Greg Zabel out of North Dakota State. And then in round 3, I took running back Travion Henderson out of Ohio State. And then when you look at the breakdown of what these players and how they would change kind of like their position groups, when you're looking at the defensive line, Montez Sweat, Mike Green, Austin Booker, if you re-sign Darrell Taylor and Jacob Martin, and then you look at Javon Dexter, Walton Nolan, and Andrew Billings, which would be a very, very good mix of defensive linemen to really upgrade that position group, especially if, a guy like Andrew Billings or Javon Dexter gets hurt. At least you have Walter Nolan. And then you look at the running back room, DeAndre Swift, Travion Henderson, Roschon Johnson, and then a lot of people keep forgetting about Ian Wheeler as well. And I think once Ian Wheeler comes back from injury, I think Ben Johnson may see some intrigue with him in his offense as well, knowing that he has a lot of explosive burst as well. Then when you look at the offensive lineman, and this is basically looking kind of like how I envision the starting offensive line being if the Chicago Bears and Ryan Poles are able to hit big in free agency and the NFL draft. Braxton Jones at left tackle. You have Darnell Wright at right tackle. Greg Zabel at one of the guard positions. Trey Smith, obviously you can land him in free agency playing right guard. And then hopefully Drew Dahlman at center for free agency, or you can, I guess, opt to keep Coleman Shelton for cheaper as well. I think that would be a much improved unit for Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears offense in 2025. So overall, Bears fans, give me a grade from a scale A to F on my 3-round Chicago Bears mock draft on today's episode of Keek on the Mic. Once again, I'm focusing on trenches all offseason long. I feel like this offseason is very easy for Ryan Poles. He understands what he needs to do. I think it needs to be all trenches, not only in the NFL draft, but in free agency as well. And I know a lot of people will say, well, you can't fix the offensive line, the defensive line in one offseason. I beg to differ. When you have the resources like Ryan Poles, when you have the 4 picks in the top 100, and if Ian Cunningham gets that job in Jacksonville, you will add another 3rd-round pick. So you would have 5 picks in the top 100 to really fix the offensive line, the trenches, the defensive line, and then in free agency, with having $69 million in cap space, and that number can go up with some cuts. Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears have all the resources in the world to really create a dominant defensive line and offensive line as soon as hopefully this next season. You already have pieces in Montez Sweat, Austin Booker, right? And then you look at Javon Dexter, Andrew Billings. You already have the pieces in place to build some dominant units. So now it's up to Ryan Poles to invest his resources wisely. I know he's kind of on I would say not really a short leash, but obviously upper management is keeping a close eye on him. But Ryan Poles understands the pressure he is under, but luckily enough, Ben Johnson coming over from the organization he's coming from with the Detroit Lions can help him build that vision of the offensive line he really needs to build a strong unit and help his offense and Caleb Williams flourish. So, but other than that, Bears fans, make sure you guys continue to hit that subscribe button and the notification to catch all Bears content right here on the podcast. Make sure you guys follow me on all my social media platforms, and make sure you share this episode of Keek on the Mic with every single Bears fan that you know. But other than that, be back for an all-new Bears podcast right here on Keek on the Mic. Thanks, guys, and as always, bear down.
You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't Keek on the Mic. You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't Keek on the Mic. You can go and subscribe, cause I be on it right. You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't Keek on the Mic.